Not safe for work. What is the best not safe for work historical fact you know? The oldest known objects that were probably Shrek's toys were made out of stone and animal dung car. 30k years ago. The oldest known objects that were definitely Shrek's toys were anatomically shaped jade and bronze dildos butt plugs dating back to 3000 years. Fath Ali Shah Qajar, second king in Qajar dynasty in Iran, about 200 years ago, had 160 wives. Nasiruddin Shah Qajar had about 50. In Islam you're not allowed to marry more than 4 wives at the same time. It is said that Nasiruddin Shah was once walking in his palace and saw a beautiful girl, and asked if he could marry her. Everyone was looking at him weirdly and he asked why. One of his servants said that she was his daughter. The ancient city of Alexandria had one of the most famous red light districts, brothels, in the world. Once the call girls went on a strike and the economy of the city was at risk, so Cleopatra consulted one of the wise men in the library, and he suggested that they build another district as a competitor. Then they had 2 districts and the call girls of the first district had to end their strike. Charles II, Charles the Impotent, was the convergence point for several generations of royal inbreeding and was born with significant disabilities. His parents were desperate for him to produce an heir. They implemented a system of ropes and pulleys to lower virgins onto him in hopes he could impregnate one. It didn't work and the dynasty collapsed. Ottoman Padishah Selim II died by stepping on a soap and falling while chasing girls in his harem. Pretty sure Salvador Dali took imprints of a lot of people's a-hole folds and made the shocking discovery that each and every butthole fold that exists is unique in its foldiness. In ancient Greece, cool girls used to press "follow me" into their sandals so that when they walked it would imprint into the dirt or sand. So when people saw it they'd know that they could follow the trail and it would end in a cool girl and maybe some Shreks. There's a sculpture I love called the Slipper Slapper that shows Aphrodite and Pan, and she is, edit. My bad, this is not true, holding a sandal with "follow me" on the bottom. Big edit. Sorry. I appear to have misunderstood a professor and then didn't follow up before posting. The Slipper Slapper is a beautiful sculpture, but does not have "follow me" studded on the bottom in Greek. My bad for not researching the statue more before posting. In the 1840s, England had a parliamentary investigation into women working in coal mines. Not about the frequent deaths, men and women, or the conditions, horrible, working there, and not even that the women worked bare-chested alongside the men, but over the fact that the women wore trousers while doing so. The painter John Ruskin supposedly broke up with his wife after seeing her naked, because he was too disgusted to consummate the marriage. She then married another artist. It's believed that this is most likely because she had pubic hair, and he didn't realize that it was normal because he had only seen nude classical statues and children. When Victor Hugo died, all the cool girls in Paris took a holiday to mourn him. They all got to know him pretty well, if you know what I mean. 18th century Empress of Russia Catherine the Great employed foot ticklers to turn her on. Saint Lawrence was martyred on a gridiron. His last words were, "I'm well done on this side, turn me over." He's now the patron saint of cooks and comedians. I'm not making any of this up. Hitler had the hots for his niece Jelly Rorbel, 23 years old, who was found dead in her bedroom after she shot herself in the chest with his own gun, noting the fact that she lived with him until 1931. There are a lot of controversial aspects to that story, but also a lot of interesting pieces of information. Some historians speculate that they had a bizarre relationship and that, probably, she was the love of his life. He mourned her death for a week locked in her bedroom, denied food and wanted to kill himself. After that he kept her room as a shrine and kept her memories with him until near his death. A merkin is a replacement wig for pubic hairs call girls used to use after they shaved theirs due to pubic lice. Pedicabo ego vos eteramabo, a classic line of Latin poetry and the first thing I say when people ask me to say something in Latin. It means I'll sodomize and fascifric you. It was written by the famous poet Catullus, who also did the whole Million Kisses poem everyone needs to translate in Latin class. Roman Emperor Commodus had a harem of 300 women and men and spent most of his time there. Best? I would not call this best, but it's certainly stuck with me since I learned it in class. In ancient Greece it was believed that if a girl doesn't lose her virginity by her first period, she would fill up with blood to the point where her eyes would turn red, and she would hear voices telling her to jump into wells. Or, at least, it was written in one Greek doctor's writings. There's no real evidence how widely it was believed. Not so much as historically as biblical. According to the Bible, right when Jesus is getting arrested by the Romans, a random unnamed naked guy just runs past everyone. He is never mentioned again, and it is unknown why they even put in the Bible. It's Mark 14:51-52 if you want to check it out. Belarus, World War II. A high-ranking Nazi officer had a brothel concubine set up. Obviously, not consensual. Well, some of the ladies didn't like the situation and didn't like Nazis, so they put a landmine under his mattress. I call it the Belarusian space program. Lyndon Johnson supposedly got a Secret Serviceman to stand in front because he had to pee and be shielded from view. Lyndon Johnson purposefully peed on the Secret Serviceman's leg, knowing full and well he wouldn't budge. Mathematician Kurt Gödel suffered from mental illness and was paranoid he was going to be poisoned. He would only eat food his wife had prepared for him. In 1977, she was hospitalized for 6 months and could no longer prepare his food. In her absence, he refused to eat and eventually starved to death. He only weighed 65 pounds when he died. My understanding is that most common folk throughout much of history had very meager lodgings, and most families would sleep together both for warmth as well as the simple fact that they didn't have the space for people to sleep separately. If mum and dad were in the mood to procreate, the rest of the family was just there. In the war for Texas independence against Mexico, after the Battle of the Alamo, there was this Mexican woman who was a spy for Texas, nicknamed the Yellow Rose of Texas. She went and seduced the Mexican General Santa Anna, and while they were hooking up, the Texans did a surprise attack and slaughtered many Mexicans and won the war. Probably got some facts wrong, lol. King Edward II of England was apparently tortured before death, which included shoving a red-hot poker up his bum to burn his insides out whilst alive. There does remain some debate about this, but I was taught this in school. William the Conqueror allegedly smashed his testicles on the pommel of his horse's saddle, which eventually killed him. But that's not the end of it. During his funeral ceremony, they had placed him in a stone coffin sarcophagus thing. It was unusually hot that day and his body swelled. Well, the coffin did not. So during his funeral, where he died by smashing his nuts, his body exploded. Don't know if it's true, but my history teacher told me about this one call girl that got out of dying or something by showing the judges her boobs, claiming it would be against God to destroy something so beautiful. George Washington, in his youth, was a handsome, strapping young man that all the women and officers' wives wanted to screw. Our founding father was a bit of a poonhound. While receiving oral shreks in hot tubs, JFK would hold women's heads underwater during climax. His back pains were so severe Secret Service helped him out of the tub. Not safe for work, but Mozart has a piece of music called Lick My Ass. After Nero, how can you have a not safe for work history thread without naming him? Kicked his wife to death. He met a young boy named Sporus. According to some, Sporus held somewhat of a resemblance to Nero's late, killed, wife, Poppaea. And so Nero had the boy castrated and married him. During the marriage, they appeared in public as a happy couple as Nero paraded his new bride around to Greece and then back to Rome, where he had married another guy named Pythagoras, not the maths guy. Nero called Pythagoras his husband and called Sporus his wife. Sporus was labeled the Empress. A lot of people think that Nero took to Sporus because of the guilt he felt for kicking his wife to death, as he even called Sporus Poppaea. The wife he kicked to death. Needless to say, Nero had issues and his classic not safe for work history. He ran the gamut of motherfricker with his mum, killed his wife, castrated boys who looked like his dead, murdered wife and kept them around for his pleasure guilt, married strong dudes, not that there's anything wrong with that, and ended up killing himself. I'm positive a lot of his history is propaganda and I recognize how mental illness still goes diagnosed in today's world, not to mention the ancient world. Also trying to look through the anti-Nero and revisions to find the truth is supremely challenging. But damn, that shoot is fricked. The one about Gandhi regularly group bathing, group sleeping, cuddling, and getting trip teasers and lap dances from really young women, one of which was his grand, or great-grand, I can't recall, niece, to test his sexual restraint or whatever. LOL. Elagabalus is my favorite. Super young Roman emperor who also was a transsexual call girl. From Wiki, Cassius Dio reported that Elagabalus would paint his eyes, depilate his body hair and wear wigs before call girling himself in taverns, brothels, and even in the imperial palace. Finally, he set aside a room in the palace and there committed his indecencies, always standing nude at the door of the room, as the harlots do, and shaking the curtain which hung from gold rings, while in a soft and melting voice he solicited the passers-by. There were, of course, men who had been specially instructed to play their part. For, as in other matters, so in this business, too, he had numerous agents who sought out those who could best please him by their foulness. He would collect money from his patrons and give himself airs over his gains. He would also dispute with his associates in this shameful occupation, claiming that he had more lovers than they and took in more money. Murdered at 18 by his own guards and thrown in the sewer. Then they went so far as to remove his name from all temples and remove all traces of him from society.